Namaskar. Welcome to this session. We have been dealing with Abhyasa, the effort to be steady the mind, effort to be steady the chitta, be calm the mind and be calm the chitta. Now, towards the end of the last session, we were discussing with concept of field of activity. And a little more deliberation needs to be done on this concept of field of activity. See, the field of activity means the field where we carry out our activities. Because our activity corresponds to field, and the field can be facilitating or defacilitating our activity. So therefore, we always try to tune our field of activity suitable to our activity. Now, what is this concept? Field of activity. Like when you are back home, it is proper that you do something domestic work. So that's the field, that at home you will carry out some domestic activity. It is ideal to be carrying out a domestic activity. At office, you are supposed to carry out office activity. So office is a place which is conducive, suitable, proper, that you carry out your office activity. So there are two things: is that your activity corresponds to your field of activity. On the other hand, your activity should correspond to field of activity, and field of activity should correspond to your activity. There are two things. To be doing particular activity, we want particular place where there is a facility and it is more proper, more conducive to be carrying out that activity. That means what? Suppose you want to carry out office work. It is ideal that you get to office and do your work. So first what you decide is activity. I want to do office work. Now if I want to do office work, then I commute to my office place and then do my office work. So the activity is decided first and then we go for suitable activity. We decide on activity first and then we try to find out whether we can go to a suitable place for such an activity. So sometimes the activity is decided first. The second one is that you are already in a place. Then you decide what activity is suitable in this place. So you are already in a place and then you want to adjust your activity to the place. So understand these two facets of concept here of the field of activity. So either you are in the field of activity and you do compatible activity on one hand. On the other hand, you have an activity and you try to choose and select and opt for suitable field of activity. This is how our business activity of life is. We are in particular place and then we prefer to do suitable activity to that field, or sometimes we have an activity to carry out, we create a suitable field for that activity. Okay, so these are the two facets of concept of field of activity, which is so important because your quality of activity depends upon the field of activity. If the field of activity is suitable, compatible, facilitating, resourceful, then you know that there is more chance of your activity taking place on a superior quality and a superior grade. If the field of activity is unsuitable, then you know that it hampers your quality of activity. So that is why this concept of field of activity is important. Being in a temple, what should you do? Being in office, what ideally should you do? Being at home, ideally, what should you do? Being at home when everyone in family or the family members are around, what is ideal that you should do? Being in a home, nobody around, then what ideally should you be doing? So it all depends upon the condition of field of activity, because at home you can have condition that every one of the family members is around, and then you decide as to what is suitable to be doing here. It is possible that nobody is at home, and therefore what you would be doing is different. So also office place. When office is functional, office hours, it is during office hours when all the people are around, the office staff is around, what is the right thing that you should be doing? But it is possible that you might be in your office place and nobody is around. You have gone to your office, not during office hours, but during some other hours. So you are sure that nobody is there, nobody is going to come, nobody is around. What you might do in an office would be different thing. So the field of activity. So try to understand what are the probabilities on the field of activity. And then what will be the activity that you will opt for. So the wise and prudent people always consider the field of activity an activity, and they try to adjust one of those which is adjustable. The other one may not be adjustable. One of those is adjustable, so he adjusts it. So that's a concept of field of activity. Now, therefore, why this concept is so important here is that now understand here why the field of activity is so important. Now, in yoga, where you are going to be steady the mind. So understand, now you want to be steady the mind. Now the field of activity, suppose it is outskirts of your town or a natural resort or your home with nobody around or a temple shrine. When the temple is almost isolated, there is no crowd in the temple. So you want to be calm your mind and be steady your mind. So you have to consider the field. How is the field? Which is the field? At home, what will you do to quieten your mind? Be steady the mind. In a temple, in a shrine, in the sanctum sanctorum of the temple, which is your personal deity, and nobody around, what will you do to quieten your mind? Be steady the mind. Or in the temple, when people are there, in and out, people are moving in and out, and what will you do to quieten your mind in that case? So, the field of activity, it can be, what are the probabilities for the field to be in a condition or a state? Temple, no one around. Temple, few people around. Temple, significantly crowded. Temple, very, very, very crowded. So these different means will be adopted for the mind to be steadied. Or the home condition. Home condition, all family members are around. What will you do to be steady the mind? Your home condition with not only family people around, but even extended family in the house or some friends and guests in the house. What will you do to be steady the mind and be calm the mind? Will be another thing. So, now what do we do usually to be steady the mind? Suppose we want to be steady the mind and be calm the mind. Then we decide whether to be at home and quieten the mind, or whether to go on outskirts of the town and be steady the mind, or whether to go to a garden, settle in a garden and be steady the mind, or go to a sea beach and quieten the mind, or go to a shrine, temple and quieten the mind, or go onto the terrace, get onto the terrace of your building and quieten the mind. So we will be applying different means to quieten the mind depending upon the field, that field. Now I gave you some examples where you might be looking to quieten your mind. Or sometimes you are in a field and then you want to quieten the mind. You have already arrived at a field, you are already in a location, you are already in a field, such as your house with no one around, or your house with family members around, or your house with the guests around. So these will be different things. And we will be prudent to select the proper means to be steady the mind. So the two probabilities that you want to be steady the mind, and then you look at the field. Where are you? Which is the field? And what is suitable to be doing here in this field, in this condition of the field? Or you are already in the field and you want to be steady the mind, be calm the mind. So, say for example, you are in a railway station and you want to quieten the mind. What will you do? So you are already got into a place. You are already got into a place such as railway station to hilltop and terrace top. So you are already in a location, and then it occurs to you that you should be steady your mind and be calm your mind. So now let us come to the moot point here. In yoga, you want to be steady the mind, be calm the mind. Being a yogic endeavor, you must settle down within your embodiment. Say, be that yama, niyama, asana, pranayam, pratyahar, whatever, dharana, dhyan, samadhi, that you want to be steady the mind and be calm the mind. So which is the field? The field in yoga, or for that matter even adhyatma, what is loosely called as spirituality. In adhyatma, if you want to be steady the mind, you settle down, you do that something internally. Any aspect of yoga, be that yama niyamas, ahimsa, satya, aste, etc., yama to shausha, santosh, tapasvadhyaya of niyamas, which is the yogic mode. You will have to first settle down within yourself. The field is the embodiment. Now, for you to understand this in a better way, it is better to consider a limb of yoga, Ashtanga yoga, asana. Now, what is the field of activity in asanas? Your own embodiment. That is for essential yoga. Otherwise, you might say, I would settle down in a quiet place in my house, settle down on a mat. So that is the field for you to start yoga. Otherwise, you can argue that way. I look for a place, my room, where nobody is going to come. Then lay a mat there, take a corner in the room or somewhere in the room, and set the room properly for me to do my yoga practice. And then lay a mat and settle on the mat. The field of activity, you would say that it is mat. No, that is for you to start yoga. For you to start yoga, the field is that room, the mat, and suitable condition in the room, suitable environment in the room, and then you settle on your mat, carpet or whatever, and that is the field to start. But yoga is done internally. So the field for yoga would be your embodiment. Yoga is done within one's body, mind, breath, senses, organs. So understand these aspects. Doing yoga on the floor, on a mat, find out what is it. And doing yoga on one's own body, in one's own body, on one's own breath in one's own breath, on one's own mind, in one's own mind. So understand this yoga, which is done internally, is really the yoga. You might start in your room, you might start on a floor, you might start on a mat. That is only starting of yoga. But starting on the mat or on the floor, where do you do yoga? You do within yourself. Now, within yourself means what? Again, you go for preparatories, of which you are aware. Associated condition in body, mind and breath. Needed conditions in body, mind and breath. Unified conditions in body, mind and breath. So that's the field. So you arrange the field that way that body, mind, breath can interact, interplay, and can have interface, and they can have mutual subserviencies. So this is the field where body, mind, breath, senses, organs, psyche mutually subserve each other, mutually get subserved by each other. So understand this field. So for that you need to be familiar with really the preparatories for asanas, or which I have been describing as the Arambhana Kriya or commencement act. So because yoga is done within oneself by the instruments which are oneself. So now understand how yoga is done. Yoga is done by oneself, on oneself, in oneself, with oneself, by oneself. On oneself. So on, in, for, by, with oneself. So this is a unique field condition. So I want you to understand this unique kind of the field of activity. The field of activity is such where the mind doesn't want to really work for you. The breath doesn't really want to work for you. You do not really want to work on breath or on mind. It is body, mind, breath. They work for each other, in each other, with each other, by each other. And you are more prominently a witnessive entity, what is called as Sakshi. That is why yoga is not essential yoga when it is a condition that I am doing it. Like it happens in other realms. I am playing the music, I am singing the music, I am doing the painting, I am doing the sculpting, I am doing the carving. Here in yoga, it's a different condition. And the field is also set by the commencement act for body, mind, breath, senses, organs, psyche, consciousness to interact with each other, have interface and interact with each other, and then be in mutual subserviency, and then be mutually subserved. So this is how the field of activity is in yoga. Is it not important to really understand this this concept here? Because if the field is not proper, what is the scope of your activity succeeding? So that's why we always choose a proper place. We say, I want a proper place to be doing this. I want proper place to be doing that. And these are two different places for me to be doing this or doing that. So if I am there, I will do that activity. I am here, I will do this activity. So that there is scope to succeed, and there are prospects for the activity to be successful. So we always consider the field of activity. Which field is suitable? Which field is more suitable? Which field is best suitable? Which field is not suitable? Then one will not venture into be doing that activity in a field which is not suitable. So the concept of field of activity is so important. Now this is the unique description of the field of activity. It is a place where you are able to work on your body, mind and breath and senses to start with. Then your body is able to work on your mind is able to work on your body, your breath is able to work on your body is able to work on breath. So your body is able to work on your breath and mind, your mind is able to work on your body and breath, your mind is able to work on your body and breath, and your mind is able to work on your body and breath. So these interactions we must facilitate. That is really the culture of yoga. So you must be very familiar with this, and you have to develop necessary skills. So therefore now you will understand a unique condition here. You have to do yoga where the means to are yoga and end to is yoga. The means to is yoga in the sense the union of body, mind, breath, senses, organs. They must come together. So that is also yoga. When they come together, all aspects of your embodiment, yours in you come together. That itself is yoga. That is one connotation. Then what you seek out of it is also yoga. So the instrument to seek and the end to be sought, both are yoga. So there are two kinds of yoga. One yoga as the means to seek, the sought, and another yoga which is that is to be sought. Now this is an unusual condition. The subjective entity, objective entity, instrumental entity, they are distinct in other fields of activity. You can identify that these are different characteristics of the different entities with different characteristics. The objective entity that is to be attained, the subjective entity through which it is to be attained, and the subjective entity which wants to attain. So we know that the salient features of subjective entity, objective entity, instrumental entity are different, and there is some definitely an external factor, one external factor at least. To gain knowledge about the physics, I will have to take up the book of physics. Now, book of physics is not integral aspect of my embodiment. Or to study physics, I have to go to laboratory, a scientific laboratory, physical laboratory, and then study physics. Now that laboratory is not integral to my embodiment. So it is a foreign entity, it's an outside entity. So take any activity, you will certainly find one external factor at least. I want to eat food. If I want to eat food, the food is extraneous to me and then I consume it. I want to cook food. The cooking range, cooking instruments are external to my embodiment. They are not part of my embodiment. So see, any act you take, there is always an external factor. So the object is either external or instrument is external, or at least the part of it is external. Only subjective entity is yours. I want to know, I want to do, I want to get, I want to give. In each case, the subjective entity is only intrinsic to you. And part of instrumental entity might be part of you. such as your mind, your intelligence, your organs, your cognitive organs, to give and take, to do, to know. So instruments will be partially integral to you, but there is certainly some extraneous factor for you to do and know, such as light. You require illumination for knowledge. Now that light is outside you. The objects are outside you. Maybe the instruments to know, such as telescope, microscope, they'll be extraneous. So you'll always identify an external factor in an activity where there is subjective entity, objective entity, instrumental entity. Now in yoga, the unique condition, because of Adhyatma, see, all those can be integrally yours. All those can be integrally yours. Subjective entity, objective entity, instrumental entity. Particularly when you are doing yoga, you are doing on your body, you are doing on your mind, you are doing on your breath. Your mind is doing on your rest of you. Your mind is doing on rest of you. So they have, that is the interface, interaction between your aspects of embodiment, and they mutually subserve what gets subserved. That is unique aspect of Adhyatma. That is why Adhyatma is Adhyatma. In Adhyatma, you don't have to depend on something external. You reform yourself in Adhyatma, spirituality. You reform yourself. Who is reforming? Integrally yours. What is informed? What is reformed? Again, integrally yours. What is the instrument of reforming? Again, integral to yours. It is by your mind, you reform. By your intellect, you reform. By your psyche, you reform. That is why it is called Adhyatma, and there is no word for this in English. Spirituality is not that. That is not a signature condition of spirituality. So yoga is wonderful academy for Adhyatma. It tells you about the Adhyatmic activity, unique dynamics, where the objective, subjective, instrumental entities are all integrally yours. They are you, they are yours, they are in you, and they are in you for you, they are yours for you. So understand that uniqueness. So see how is the field of activity. That is why I wanted you to understand this concept. The field of activity is unique. Say for example in asana, what is being addressed? Something of your embodiment, something very much yours, integrally yours, or something integrally in you that you want to reform. There you want to reform. Who is reforming? You are reforming. You are reforming what? You are reforming yours. With what are you reforming? You are reforming something which is again yours. That is why this is unique field of activity. And therefore it is quite a probability that your mind can be studied in such a field of activity. Now externally, if you decide to settle down, be settled in your mind, such as temple shrine. Now, it is possible that it can be detonated, your effort can be detonated, influx of people coming in and then a lot of noise, etc. Can happen, and then you say, oh, now that is not in your hands. The external factors which are antagonizing your objective, they are not in your hand, and then you come out with fretting and fuming because something extraneous to you has interfered. Now that is not in your control, that is not in your hands. Whereas in yoga, we leave no room to such things. that some extraneous factor will come and devastate, because you are working on you, with you, by you. So everything is integrally yours. So that's the unique aspect of the field of activity. So in such field of activity, it is quite reasonable to advise that you can be steady the mind, be calm the mind. Now, Arjuna asked that question because he did not have the understanding that yoga is something to be done in such a field of activity, where they are all your forces, they are all integrally yours. If they create problem, you are responsible. Even if suppose some aspect of your embodiment is having distraction potentials and really distracting, you blame yourself. That's how the Adhyatma is. You have no chance to blame someone for your practices spoiled or detonated or devastated. You are to be blamed. That is why those who are in Adhyatmic realm pick up this kind of nature. They don't try to find out whom can I blame for my fault, whom can I blame for my failure, whom can I blame for my shortcoming, whom can I blame for my inability, incapacity. So we try to trace something that is extraneous to us, and then we put responsibility on it, and we say, because of him, because of her, because of this, because of that, my success was detonated. And that's why we are always in the habit of finding faults with others when we have failed. This is a strange human mind. When we have failed, we want to identify a factor, quite a responsible factor, so that we can shift the blame there, rather than having the blame on ourselves. And that's why human mind has this tendency to be a fault finder in case of failure. Now, in case of success, although the extraneous factors have contributed for your success, we say, I have succeeded, it is my success, it is my effort, it is my endeavor, it is my intelligence with which I have succeeded. But when we fail, we try to put the responsibility on someone else. So that's the human psyche. It becomes fault finder when there is failure. And when it is success is by oneself. Failure is because of some extraneous factors, extraneous conditions, external conditions. So, in Adhyatma, if you are oriented to Adhyatma, you will not be in such a habit of blaming someone, of blaming something for your failures. So here you are responsible for any untoward outcome or unsuccessful outcome. So in yoga, it is understand asanas, it is such a field. So also pranayam is such a field. So also japa, dhyana, what you call as meditation. So find out how the field of activity is all yours, all in you, all of you, all with regards to you, all with respect to you. So that's why it is a unique field of activity. And therefore, the one who is outwardly man, worldly man, or Arjuna on the battlefield thought that it is really unpracticable advice, unreasonable advice, such as be steady in the mind. Because he was on the battlefield. He was exposed to battle conditions. He was exposed to his alien people on the other hand, uh, other side of the Dharma Kshetra, Kurukshetra. So, and those who are in mundane activity really cannot imagine any such efforts to be steady the mind, because extraneous factors are hovering around us, or they are very much around us, and therefore we are not self-sufficient there. In yoga, you have to go inwards. So yoga is never done outside. Don't say I do yoga in this place, I do yoga in this place of the hall, I do the yoga on this mat. No. Or this location. No. Yoga doesn't take place there. It starts there. Yoga is all done internally. It's an internal activity, internalizing activity. So that's why a unique field, and therefore abhyasa is quite a reasonable advice, or effort to be steady in the mind is quite probable, possible, plausible thing, which is not plausible, possible, probable in bustling crowd, or hustle and bustle of the crowd and noise, etc. So there it is not really practicable to advise, make an effort to be steady the mind in crowded airport, crowded railway stations, crowded marketplaces. That's not the place. You can't have any effort to be steady the mind there. So here in yoga, it is quite plausible, possible, reasonable advice that there is effort to be steady the mind, be calm the mind. That's why I wanted to tell you about the concept of field of activity, that you work within yourself. The field of yoga is within. And when you set right the field properly, that's a yoga by itself. So that's a means yoga. And then you try to attain a next step and stage in yoga, which is your goal. So yoga is by yoga. Yogat yoga pravartate. Yoga is done by yoga. Music is not done by music. To be doing music, playing music, singing music, you require so many instruments. Painting is not done by painting. To be doing painting, you require a canvas, you require a paper, you require a brush, you require a pencil, you require those instruments. So painting is done with the help of canvas and painting material, or with the help of paper, drawing paper and pencil and watercolor, etc. Whereas yoga is done by yoga. Yogat yogam pravartate. Yoga comes out of yoga. So there is a means yoga, which is body, mind, breath, senses, organs, psyche, consciousness coming together, getting kneaded, getting unified, and then taking up condition to be subserved and to be subserving, and then yoga will actualize. If they do not subserve each other, yoga will not actualize. So there is yoga as the raw material, and the finished material is also yoga. Only what raw material yoga is and what finished material yoga is can be two different things. However, there will be yoga. You can distinguish between raw material yoga, which are means of yoga, and the end yoga, where yoga has fructified. So if the yoga is to be reaped, the field should be the ground of it should be yoga. You have to do watering, manuring, etc. to a plant. So your watering is yoga, manuring is yoga, You need to have sunlight in that place. So that sunlight for yoga fruit is also yoga. You need air, so that air is also yoga. So see, understand this concept of yoga. That is why it is called yoga, union. Anyway, so the abhyasa, effort to be steady the mind, in this field is what is being suggested, and that needs to be understood. That there is reference to this field, and with reference to the field, it has been suggested. Be steady the mind, be calm the mind. Effort to be steady the mind is abhyasa. Effort to be calm the mind is abhyasa. What will you do in this field to be calm your mind? Now understand, in the light of what will you do to be calm your mind in temple, what will you do to be calm your mind in home, what will you do to be calm your mind on terrace top, what will you do to be calm yourself in the outskirts, in forest, in woods, in isolated places. You will be doing different things, and therefore you will be doing different thing which is unique. To be steadying the mind and be calming the mind in yoga. So it is be calming the mind, be steadying the mind in yoga, for yoga, by yoga, through yoga. So understand how the yoga might be coming in a form in yoga. How yoga would come in the form by yoga. How the yoga would come in the form of for yoga. So yoga is by yoga, with yoga, in yoga, on yoga, for yoga. So somewhere you must think about these kinds of yogs which come in the form of in the form of on, in the form of by, in the form of for, in the form of with, because they are all yoga. So yoga is done by yoga, with yoga, in yoga, on yoga, for yoga, on yoga, etc. And the characteristics of each of these yoga will be different. However, the characterized in all those will be one and the same, identical, that is union, unified condition. So that is about the field of activity. Now in this field of activity, see how it is also field for vairagya. That also can be a matter of investigation and a kind of deliberation and reflection. Now, unique condition of this field, unique nature of this field, let me once again point out. When you are working in this field, there is facility for you to be steady the mind and even dispassionate the mind. How? Because in this field, there is nothing like that you love, you hate, you like, you dislike. Now, if you have such a condition where you don't have likes or dislikes, you don't have loves and loathes, or loves and hates, or attachment and aversions, honors and dishonors, respects and disrespect, when these things are not there, what is the chance that the mind will be unsteady? And how great is the chance for the mind to be steady? Because these are all the ones which create indentations on the mind, and therefore you can't be really having a steady mind. So when you do yoga within yourself, you don't love you, nor hate you, nor like you, nor dislike you. So once these two pairs of polarities are kept at bay, then effort to be steady the mind is quite logical advice, probable advice, plausible advice, reasonable advice. So it's a unique field. See, otherwise, all other fields of your activity, you either like them, like their something, or dislike something to more or less degree. You love something or you hate something to more or less degree. Now, here is the field where there are no likes and dislikes, no loves and loathes, no loves and hates, no attachment and aversion. That's why it is unique field of activity. So, in this unique field of activity, you will naturally harvest yoga in the form of abhyasa potentials and vairagya potentials. Your mind is more prone to go to dispassionate state when you don't have anything that is of the nature of your likes and dislikes and loves and loathes and loves and hates and attachments and aversions. So see where Vairagya is advised. Vairagya is not advised by taking you to a shopping mall and then really make you see all those things which are bewitching you, enticing you, maybe seducing you. So there is nothing that is seductive here. There is nothing that is alluring or sensory kind of craze can crop up. And therefore, that's a field for Vairagya as well. So, that's why I said it is very important to really understand this field of activity here in yoga. So, it will be both facilitating this condition to dispassionate the mind. Your effort to dispassionate the mind is Vairagya. Your effort to be steady the mind is Abhyasa. And see, this field is suitable. One and the same field is suitable for both. So you will understand how the two are related to each other, how the two are different without being different. The difference and non-difference between the two, because they come out of same field. You harvest both steadiness of the mind and dispassionateness of the mind in the same field of your chitta. And then there are such yields that they are complementing each other, they are escalating each other. So these are such crops, they help each other in the field of chitta, in the field of the consciousness. And therefore, I felt it is important to spend one complete session on this concept of field of activity, which is really not sufficient, but at the very beginning stage, it should be more than sufficient for you to understand, conceive something about this concept of field of activity. And asana is a wonderful field. See, what is to be having a characteristic condition of the mind to be steady anywhere, anytime, in more or less degree, of course. But like somebody we characterize, or we say somebody is personified steady mind. That means what? The mind is steady in any oscillation, in any upheavals of the conditions outside. Whether claimant condition or inclement condition, the mind is steady. Of course, the degree of how much it is steady and the quality of its steadiness will vary. However, it will be characteristically steady of that person who has steady mind as a signature condition. It really doesn't matter whether it is bustling crowd in a marketplace or hustle and bustle on crowded streets, or where there are lots of respects and honor and dishonor possible, People will honor you, people will dishonor you, people can be booing you, can be acclaiming you. So whatever the condition where there is a lot of acclaim that you are uh, clapped or you are booed, but the mind is steady. So that's a signature condition of the mind. So another uh, advice in yoga is that whatever aspect of yoga you are doing, you have to see that you turn out this signature condition. As far as possible, you are trying to develop steadiness. So in asanas, you have asanas which range between very difficult and very easy. In every asana, whatever it is, whether very, very easy asana to body or very difficult asana to body, you must have this profile of the mind that it is personified steadiness, quietness. Whether easy to mind and difficult to mind, this must be signature condition again. Whether easy for breath and breathing or difficult for breath and breathing, this should be signature condition. So in all asanas, we must have this kind of radar to see that we are always having that state on surface. Pranayam similarly. When you are doing the pranayam, you must take care to see that you have such a signature condition of the mind on surface, prominently occupying, or characteristic condition of the mind, that the mind is steady, mind is serene, mind is quiet, mind is sober, mind is tender, mind is sublime. So also when yamas and niyamas are practiced, it's not just practicing as it is practiced in morality, ethicality. Many of those who are in a particular moral condition, ethical condition, internally there is a lot of tumult. Whereas in yoga, if you are trying to practice morality, ethicality, you must take utmost care to see that the mind is neutral. The mind is not polarized. The mind is not getting into the gravity of likes and dislikes and loves and loathes and loves and hates and attachment and aversion. It must be in the median plane. Whatever act of your business activity of life, you have to see that your mind is as far as possible in median plane. Whatever activity you are doing in your yoga, it could be physical yoga, psychological yoga, mental yoga, respiratory yoga, pranic yoga, mental yoga, emotional yoga, intellectual yoga, identity organ yoga. Everywhere you have to see that this is the signature condition of the mind, that I am trying to keep the mind aligned. I am trying to keep the mind aligned means centered. I am trying to keep the mind. In fact, with reference to mind, it is non-aligned condition. When the mind is non-aligned, that is perfect alignment of the mind. So, whatever phase of your yoga, whatever aspect of yoga you are practicing, you have to see that you have this signature condition of mind on surface. And asanas give you wonderful academy because you have different kinds of asanas: supine asanas, prone asanas, inversions, forward bending, backward bending, lateral rotations. Then asanas which are short duration, which are long duration asanas, asanas where you cannot be staying too long, or asanas where you need to repeat multiple times. Some asanas you don't need to repeat in a session. Some asanas you need to repeat in a session. So there are repeatable asanas, non-repeatable asanas. So all these factors, you have various kinds of asanas. So in each asana, you will try to have this state of mind and churn out this state of mind. So also then you have body considerate conditions, mind considerate condition, breath considerate condition. So all those nuances of asanas, everywhere your mind should be in equanimity, equilibrium. So then, therefore, you are trained enormously for the equilibrium of the mind, which is so important. And then that will reflect in your life. And then in your life also, you will be quite a matured person. Asanas give you the training. Asanas is an enormous academy. That will be considering at some later point in time how asanas are enormous academy. But here, with reference to this topic, let me tell you that in various kinds of asanas, you try to have this state of mind, and then you try to churn out better quality of the same state of mind. That is so important in yoga. Equity, equanimity, equilibrium, samatvam. So it gives enormous education for the mind to be steady, even in business activity of life, mundanity of life. So that's the concept of abhyasa. So even in yama-niyamas should be a practice to turn out such a mind, and yama-niyamas should be also founded on such a state of mind. In morality, ethicality, you don't do that. Many times, having done a moral act, your mind can be vexed. Or to be having moral condition, mind will be vexed. Having had moral condition negotiated, mind can be vexed. Because we don't consider our state of mind. For the sake of moral, ethical principle, we try to practice it. In yoga, this is not allowed. That's why yama-niyamas are not moral ethical practices. They are ethico-religious practices. Anyway, abhyasa sadhana, we'll have to now understand in the whole scheme of yoga. Now, I will just end this session by making a statement that we might think that there will be variegated abhyasa sadhanas. Somebody, a child, a teenager, in adolescence, in youth, in old age, adulthood, old age, very old age, ripe old age, man, woman, young and old, strong and weak, healthy and unhealthy. So we think these are variegated means. So we think that this is really complicating, because what a 15-year or 18-year boy or girl would do to steady the mind, and what 55 years of age by a man and woman would be doing would be different things. So how will we really crystallize what are the efforts to be steady the mind, be calm the mind? So it will change from person to person to person to person, condition to condition to condition to condition. Then what is the yoga scheme here? So it seems to be a very complicated thing to be suggesting means to be steady the mind and means to dispassionate the mind. For each psyche it would differ. For each embodiment it would differ. For each person it would be differ. Then how is it that yoga is giving the means? So that we will see next time. It is not as complicated as my final statement has made it to be felt that way. So let's see how it is not complicated in yoga. But that is next time. Namaskar, all of you.